On the morning of April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic was 4 days into her maiden voyage and roughly 1,300 miles from New York. Clear skies, calm seas. Inside the largest ship the world had ever seen, more than 2,200 souls woke up to what felt like just another Sunday. Nobody was afraid. Nobody was rushing. Nobody had any idea that in less than 18 hours, this floating palace would be sitting on the ocean floor, and over 1,500 of them would be dead. This is the story of that last normal day. At 9 a.m., senior wireless operator Jack Phillips picked up the first ice warning of the day. The liner Coronia reported icebergs and growlers roughly a day's sailing ahead of the Titanic. Phillips logged the message. It was passed to Captain Edward Smith by 10:15 a.m. Smith read it, he acknowledged it, and then life on the ship continued as if nothing had changed, because, to everyone on board, nothing had. At 10:30 a.m., Captain Smith stood before the first-class passengers and led the only Sunday worship service the Titanic would ever hold. The congregation sang, "Eternal Father, strong to save," a hymn that begs God for protection over those at sea. Nobody thought twice about the lyrics. There was supposed to be a lifeboat drill at 11 a.m. Captain Smith canceled it. No explanation was ever given. The crew never rehearsed what to do in an emergency. The 20 lifeboats hanging from the davits had space for only 1,178 people. There were over 2,200 on board, and on this Sunday morning, not a single person practiced getting into one. Instead, passengers filled their day with the pleasures of the ship. First-class travelers strolled the promenade deck wrapped in fur coats as the temperature slowly dropped. They read in the library. They played cards in the smoking room. They lounged in the Café Parisien while ocean light streamed through the windows. For the richest people alive, the Titanic was a 5-star hotel that happened to move. Second-class passengers had their own library, dining room, and deck. Families ate together. Children played. People wrote letters home describing the ship as magnificent. In third class, the experience was simpler, but still better than anything most of those passengers had known. Clean bunks, regular meals, common rooms where people gathered to sing and dream about new lives in America. Many had sold everything they owned just to buy that ticket. By noon, a second ice warning arrived. The steamship Baltic reported large icebergs directly ahead. Captain Smith handed the message to J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line. Ismay slipped it into his pocket and didn't return it for 5 hours. The Titanic did not slow down. Through the afternoon, the air temperature dropped sharply. By 5:30 p.m., it had fallen 10 degrees to just above freezing. At 5:50 p.m., the ship adjusted course slightly south, hoping to skirt below the reported ice field. In a normal year, this would have worked. But 1912 was not a normal year. Cold currents had pushed the ice further south than expected. The course change pointed the Titanic directly toward the iceberg that would destroy her. At 7 p.m., the bugler walked the boat deck and played "The Roast Beef of Old England," the traditional call for first-class dinner. That evening, George and Eleanor Widener hosted a private dinner party in the a la carte restaurant, honoring Captain Smith. Crystal lamps glowed against satinwood paneling. Fresh flowers sat on tables set with bone china and sterling silver. The orchestra played Puccini and Tchaikovsky. The menu was extraordinary. Oysters, consommé Olga, poached salmon, filet mignon, roast duckling, lamb with mint sauce. 10 courses, each with a different wine. By 8:55 p.m., Captain Smith checked in with the bridge and retired to his cabin. The conditions outside were moonless, clear, and dead calm. Without waves breaking against icebergs and without moonlight to reflect off the ice, the ocean was black and still. At 9:40 p.m., the most critical warning came in. The steamship Mesaba reported heavy pack ice and a great number of large icebergs just 15 miles ahead. But Phillips was buried in a backlog of personal telegrams from passengers. The message was not marked as urgent. He never delivered it to the bridge. At 10 p.m., Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee climbed into the crow's nest to begin their lookout shift. They had no binoculars. The pair had been misplaced since Southampton. Fleet and Lee stared into total darkness with nothing but their bare eyes. At 10:55 p.m., the Californian radioed one last time. "Say, old man, we are stopped and surrounded by ice." Phillips snapped back, "Shut up, I am busy." 35 minutes later, the Californian's wireless operator turned off his radio and went to bed. That ship was roughly 20 miles away, close enough to have saved everyone. By 11 p.m., most passengers had gone to their cabins. The smoking room held a few men playing cards over whiskey. The ship was quiet. The engines hummed. The stars were sharp overhead. At 11:39 p.m., Frederick Fleet saw a dark shape rising from the blackness dead ahead. He rang the bell 3 times and called the bridge. "Iceberg, right ahead." First Officer William Murdoch ordered hard a starboard and full reverse. The ship began to turn. At that speed and that distance, it was already too late. At 11:40 p.m., the starboard side of the Titanic scraped along the iceberg. Chunks of ice fell onto the deck. The collision lasted about 10 seconds. Most passengers barely felt it. Some slept right through it. A few men picked up pieces of ice and joked about putting them in their drinks. Below the waterline, the damage was catastrophic. The iceberg had buckled hull plates and popped rivets along nearly 300 feet. Water poured into 5 forward compartments. Ship designer Thomas Andrews was summoned. The Titanic could stay afloat with 4 flooded, not 5. Andrews told the captain, maybe 1 to 2 hours. And just like that, the last normal day was over. The hymn, the 10-course dinner, the undelivered warnings, the missing binoculars, the canceled lifeboat drill, the wireless operator who told the only ship close enough to help to shut up. All of it had already happened. None of it could be taken back. April 14, 1912, was the last day the Titanic existed as anything other than a tragedy. And for over 1,500 people on board, it was the last ordinary day they would ever live.